Hey there, how's it going? My name is Trent. I'm the co founder of ChurchStream. We help pastors and churches all across the country help determine if their church is truly engaged or just attending on Sunday. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's video. I try to go over a topic that is relevant in the church world that doesn't necessarily have a system in place in most churches every single week, so that I can potentially add value to a pastor and a church and they can start running their church a little bit more efficiently. I hope that what I talk about today brings you a little bit of value. But the topic of today's video is just simple. It's how do you practically determine if people are truly engaged in the life of your church or just attending on Sunday. We've all been to the church that has 1,000 people in weekly attendance, and it's the same 50 people every single week serving. That's not necessarily healthy. That indicates that we know how to grow wide, but we don't know how to grow deep. And what inevitably happens is if there's not systems in place to get people engaged, they become Sunday attenders, or worse off, they slip out the back door and we never even knew they were in the building to begin with. So my belief is that I come from the business sector, and I've worked with churches now for a couple of years on a staff level. And my belief is that if there are tools and resources and technology that is available for a CEO in the business sector, then as church leaders, we should also be able to take advantage of such resources. I believe that it is significantly harder, and this is coming from someone who's started businesses, had and run successful businesses, and I believe that it's significantly harder to be a pastor than a CEO of a secular organization. Here's why. You have to wear so many hats. You have to be a counselor, you have to be a therapist, you have to be a de facto CEO and visionary. On top of that, every single week you have to bring forth an insightful talk that's fresh, that people are engaged with. And it's hard, it's not easy. And all of that is while trying to herd volunteers to buy into and live out your vision. It's hard, it's complex, and you should have access to every tool that's available. But so many times when it comes to this topic, we're sitting around a staff table and the inevitable question pops up that's, hey, whatever happened to John Smith? And everyone in the table is racking their brain around the last time that they saw John Smith. I don't know, I think I saw him at this event, or yeah, I thought I saw him last Sunday, but I wasn't entirely sure. And it's just kind of guesswork, because all of that information, who's attending what, who's doing what, all lives here or in your notes app or something like that, and it's not being effectively tracked. Therefore, we can't truly say that we're doing everything in our power to make sure that people are not slipping through the cracks. So I think that we can create, and I can influence maybe a system for your church and how to be thinking about keeping track of these things to ensure that as 20, 30, 50 people are coming through the front door as first-time guests every single Sunday in your church, God, glory to God, we're eliminating people from slipping through the cracks or slipping out the back door. So the start of every good system is definition. What does it mean for someone to be engaged in your church? I think the best way to start would be to determine what the engagement markers are of the church. So I'm going to kind of show you what my church uses as an engagement markers. The first one being serving. I think this is obvious, and I think these will be pretty universal. But if someone is serving on a team, whether that's welcome team or worship team, I would say that's an engagement marker. The second one would be giving. They are giving to the vision, to the church, whether that's missions, tithes, offering, whatever it is. The third one would be attending events outside of Sunday. That's number 3. And then lastly, taking a next step. Okay. So these are engagement markers. If they do any of these things, I would say that that is an indicator that they are engaged in the church. Now, what if they only do one of these things every 6 months? Are they engaged in the church? I would say probably not. So the next step would be to determine the timeline in which and how many of these things in which timeline would determine a highly engaged member, an engaged member, a withdrawing member, and a disconnected member. So let's take a look. So this is what our church uses to determine those things. We go off of a 60-day scale. I have it broken down in 30 days, 2 months here. And we'd say something like this is a highly engaged member. And I'm sure that everyone can agree. If there's 6 engagement points in 60 days, that member is highly engaged. I'd even go as far as saying if there's 4 engagement markers in 60 days, that's a highly engaged member. Because keep in mind, this is on top of Sunday attendance. This isn't just showing up 3 times a month to a Sunday service. This is serving, small groups, men's breakfast, dinner parties. This is giving to the life of the church. That would be a highly engaged member in my mind. An engaged member would be at least 2 engagement markers on top of Sunday in 60 days. So they attended a small group and they gave, or they attended a small group and they served on a team. That's a pretty engaged member of the church. They're doing something every single month on top of just showing up on Sunday. Withdrawing, if they only do one thing in 60 days, they only give one gift, or they only attend one small group in 60 days, that's where I start to get a little bit concerned that person might be withdrawing from the life of the church, and we want to take some action on that. And then finally, if there are no engagements in 60 days, they are disconnected from the life of the church. Okay, so now we have defined what an engaged member versus a disconnected member looks like. Now, what do we do with that information? Because the information is only as good as your ability to use it and use it effectively. So I think that, personal touch is amazing, but even personal touch kind of leaves room for error and the ability for people to start slipping through the cracks, because now I have to remember to shoot this text, or now I have to remember making this phone call, versus let's set up a system that leads to the personal touch but ensures that no one slips through the crack. So over here, this is where we want our church. You want every member of your church to be highly engaged or engaged in the life of your church. Obviously, I think that everyone would agree with that statement. So I kind of have the entrance over here and the exit, okay? So we want everyone to be here, but sometimes we end up having people here, and this is where we need to take action. So these are the people you send the reminder text to and the updates to and all that. In addition to those things, we have things in place to make sure that these people are getting a little bit extra support and attention. So ChurchStream does this. There's other tools out there, but I think ChurchStream is one of the tools that does this the best, to where based on those rules that we set up in the beginning of the video, a member will automatically move through these statuses. So, for example, we said that one engagement in 60 days is a withdrawing member. So, in a 60-day timeline, if someone's only engaged once, they will automatically move from whatever stage they're in to withdrawing automatically. So, what happens? Boom, status changes. They are now a withdrawing member in the system, and the system sets up a drip campaign to automatically reach out. So a drip campaign is it's pretty self-explanatory. There's a trigger, and then there's an action. Basically, it's a set of triggers and actions. So when this happens, what action is going to take place? Well, we can set this up automatically in ChurchStream. So what happens is when an engaged member status changes to withdrawing member, that's our trigger, wait 2 hours, then send this text. And I'll give you an example of a text we could send. Hey, blank, haven't seen you as involved recently. Everything okay? Okay. Simple, right? It's just a text to make them, help them understand that we're thinking about them, show them that we care. And what we're trying to do here is trigger a response that then a person can reach out to them. So we trigger an action. We have a trigger. The action takes place. A personal text message is sent. And then from there, when they respond, a team member is notified, and that team member can either call, text, meet up with them, and then we can log. So let's say the personal touch leads to want to have coffee. Personal touch leads to this. Now that team member goes in and manually inputs that engagement. And what happens is now that's 2 engagements in the last 60 days. So this member will automatically get put back in the engaged category. So now, instead of it getting too late, as soon as we notice that they're withdrawing, we have action that's taking place, and we follow the steps and the protocol that causes a withdrawing member to become engaged in the church again. And then it's the same thing over here, right? So let's say this doesn't work, and in 60 days they have 0 engagements. We've determined that is a disengaged member, disconnected member. We also set up a drip campaign that has a trigger with an action that also has a text message. Hey, blank, we miss you. Hope you know we're praying. And this could be customized. This isn't like, the important part here is definitely not the text message that I'm writing out. The important part is the action that we're taking to make sure people know that they're not forgotten and they're not slipping through the cracks. We're thinking about everybody. And then kind of the same sequence follows. Our goal is to get someone to reply to us so that we can take a personal approach to getting them involved, getting them back into the life of the church. and prevent them from ending up at our exit, right? And not coming back and going to some other church, or worse off, not going to church at all. So this is an engagement model that we've implemented in our church here in California that has worked wonders. I mean, it has taken so much time off of the plate of our staff and our pastors, and allowed them and freed them up to do the things in ministry that truly matter and move the needle. And furthermore, on top of that, we've just had such a great response to from our withdrawing or our disconnected members and getting them plugged back in. And I can honestly say that it has shortened the curve of people coming in, starting, getting involved in our church, and leaving. It has shortened that so much, and we love it. We encourage everyone to develop some system. If you want to see how ChurchStream does this, which I believe, we're definitely the most comprehensive when it comes to tracking engagement, but more importantly, especially on the church's budget, we are very budget friendly. Our heart is truly to serve the church and to serve pastors and equip them to have all of the tools that they need to be and run a successful ministry. So, it's not to gouge people or make them, have to spend money that they don't need to spend. So feel free. I'll drop the link to our Calendly so that maybe we can kind of show you our tool and show you how some of these systems are working for other churches. But click that link below and schedule a call with one of our team members. And we will get you hooked up. We will get you dialed in and see if this is something that can benefit your church. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Subscribe. My goal is to just add some value every single week. Subscribe, like the video, make a comment. Maybe comment something that you would like me to tackle next so that I'm pointing this information and these systems toward actual needs in the church and not just my ideas or my thoughts. So thank you so much for your time. Have a blessed week. I just pray Sunday goes your way and the Lord uses you to speak to your congregation. And I also pray 1,000 new people come to your church on Sunday. God bless. Have a great week.